The Arctic sun hangs low and pale, like a dying lantern over an endless plain of broken white. Wind sighs across the splintered ice, carrying a song of cold so sharp it feels almost alive, whispering through cracks and crevices in the frozen skin of the world. In this stark cathedral of frost, where each breath crystallizes and falls away like shattered glass, a colossal shadow moves, deliberate, ponderous, yet filled with a quiet violence coiled beneath thick fur. A polar bear, the undisputed monarch of this crumbling empire, walks alone across the fractured wasteland, his massive paws splaying wide to balance atop ice sheets no thicker than a pane of fragile window glass. Each step is a gamble. The world beneath him groans and snaps like a giant mouth ready to swallow him whole, yet he moves forward, head low, nostrils flaring, reading the invisible signatures left behind by unseen prey. Somewhere ahead, hidden beneath the snow and ice, life stirs. A seal, perhaps, tucked in its snug lair, breathing hope into the frozen air. To the bear, that faint whiff of blubber and breath is not just dinner, it is survival itself. The irony of the Arctic is cruel. Here, the mightiest predator is at the mercy of the meekest elements. A polar bear's power is built for a kingdom of ice. Dense muscles insulating blubber, paws like snowshoes. But as the ice melts, the very stage on which he hunts vanishes beneath him. He can swim? Oh, how he can swim! But the distances are no longer those of ancient memory. Today, polar bears often swim for days across open water, chasing mirages of ice on the horizon, sometimes with cubs clinging desperately to their backs. Not every journey ends in reunion with land. In this frozen monarchy, the king can drown just like the paupers. The camera catches the bear pausing, sniffing again. His breath puffs into the air, each exhale a ghostly cloud. Then, with the patience of a seasoned assassin, he lowers himself to the ice, splaying his massive body flat, blending into the landscape as only a creature born of snow can. He inches forward, one impossibly slow movement after another, creeping toward a barely visible hole in the ice, a breathing hole for seals, a life source carved through generations of instinct and desperate necessity. Minutes stretch into hours as the bear waits, unmoving, a living statue sculpted by survival.
And then, suddenly, a flash of black and grey breaks the surface. It happens in less than a heartbeat.
The bear explodes into motion, a 1,000-pound thunderclap on cracking ice, jaws snapping toward the sleek, terrified body of the seal. Water and slush erupt skyward. For one brief, frantic moment, the outcome teeters in the balance, and then the seal slips away, vanishing into the freezing abyss below. Only the sound of splintering ice and the bear's rumbling growl remains, vibrating against the desolation. Hunger tightens its grip. Not every hunt ends in triumph, and in the Arctic, every miss is a ticking clock counting down to the next desperate gamble. Yet there is no tantrum, no visible sign of defeat. The bear merely lifts his enormous head, shakes the water from his fur in a sparkling halo, and begins the slow march once more across the splintering chessboard of ice. It's easy to think of polar bears as invincible, armored in fur and fat against the brutal whims of the north. But beneath that facade of unshakable power lies a creature exquisitely tuned, and now terrifyingly vulnerable, to a world that is evaporating faster than it can adapt. Climate change has transformed the Arctic into a game of roulette, and even the rulers are finding their crowns made of melting snow. Surprising as it may seem, not all polar bear battles are fought against prey or the elements. Sometimes their most ferocious contests are against each other. As the ice thins and territories shrink, battles between males escalate into brutal contests of muscle and will. Two giants rise on hind legs, roaring and swiping with claws long enough to tear through sealskin like paper. These duels are not for dominance alone. They are often over precious resources: a mate, a kill, a patch of unbroken ice that could mean a few more weeks of survival. Yet curiously, these battles are rarely fatal. Despite their savage appearance, polar bears possess a strange, almost gentlemanly restraint. A split lip, a torn ear, a bloodied shoulder, yes, but death, rare. In a landscape so merciless, even enemies cannot afford to waste strength recklessly. Nature has sculpted a predator ferocious enough to kill with a single blow, but wise enough to know when to withdraw. Every now and then, rare footage captures a different kind of encounter, a heart-twisting glimpse of tenderness. A mother bear teaching her wobbly cubs the art of survival, how to sniff the wind for danger, how to stalk invisible prey, how to slide across the ice belly first to avoid sudden cracks. There is humor too, young cubs clumsily face-planting into snowdrifts, puffing out in frustration, only to leap up again in chaotic, exuberant joy. It's a jarring contrast to the deadly precision of their adult lives, a reminder that even the fiercest hunters once stumbled wide-eyed through the frozen maze. And then there are the truly unexpected alliances. In increasingly desperate seasons, some polar bears have been seen feasting alongside Arctic foxes, sharing the remains of a seal kill with astonishing indifference. In a kingdom where survival trumps pride, sometimes even kings must tolerate hungry courtiers. But make no mistake, this fragile truce is not built on mercy. It is a momentary pause in the endless ballet of hunger and survival. The fox may nibble at scraps now, but if famine tightens its grip further, it may one day find itself stalked by the very creature that once ignored its existence. As twilight bleeds into the eternal polar night and the world becomes a swirling vault of stars and ice, the polar bear trudges onward. The ice moans underfoot, thinner now, treacherous with each step. Ahead the winds sharpen, hinting at another battle brewing somewhere just beyond the veil of white. He does not know what awaits, another hunt, another rival, another desperate swim into nothingness. But the king marches forward, because in the Arctic to stop moving is to surrender to the slow, hungry kiss of the cold. And somewhere in the shadows of this melting throne, new predators stir. Creatures with no fur, no claws, but with machines and hunger of a different kind. Their footprint is invisible yet crushing, and soon the king will face an enemy even he cannot claw into submission. But first, another seal hole beckons, another chance, another heartbeat between survival and silence. The tundra stretches into infinity, a land draped in white so pure it seems to erase the horizon itself. Snow drifts like ghostly veils across a landscape where even the stones have learned to crouch low, bowing to the endless howl of the wind. Under the bruised belly of a sun that barely dares rise, the cold doesn't just bite. It devours, slipping through fur and bone with an insidious patience. It is here in this barren cathedral of ice and silence that shadows begin to stir. From the swirling blizzard, a shape emerges. No, not one, but many. Low-slung forms, spectral and fluid, weaving between gusts of snow as if conjured from the storm itself. Arctic wolves. Built not for speed, but for survival, these creatures move with a choreography honed by generations of frozen necessity. Their thick coats ripple with frost, and their paws press prints into the powder that the wind hungrily tries to erase the moment they are made. They are hunters, yes, but they are also endurance artists, traveling distances so vast and so brutal that the word journey seems almost an insult. For the Arctic wolf, it is a 1,000-mile odyssey across a world trying to kill them at every step. Their breath fogs in the air, brief, beautiful bursts of life against the suffocating void. A chorus rises, a long, mournful howl that pierces the storm and carries farther than sight itself. This is no idle cry. It is a signal, a call to arms, a declaration of unity. Wolves do not hunt alone here. Alone is death. Together is survival. The pack gathers, each wolf threading into position with a grace that no general could teach. At their heart, a matriarch, scarred by winters survived and wars won, scans the horizon with eyes that see not just the now, but the possible. The prey is distant, almost mythical, and yet they move with the certainty of those who have learned that fortune favors the persistent. Somewhere out there, beyond the white dunes and razor winds, herds of muskoxen and caribou wander, heavy with the illusion of invincibility. But the wolves know better. They have learned the paradox that rules this place. The larger the beast, the harder it falls when the ice turns treacherous underfoot. And even the mighty muskox, armored in wool and stubbornness, cannot outrun a predator that treats distance itself as a weapon. Hours stretch into days. The wolves lope at a tireless, loping trot, conserving precious energy, their bodies efficient as living furnaces designed to burn fat instead of muscle. Hunger is an old companion now, riding their flanks like an invisible parasite, sharpening their senses and boiling their patience down to something diamond hard. Along the way they pass reminders of past battles, bleached antlers rising from snowdrifts like skeletal hands, blood-flecked ice where some other hunt ended in either triumph or tragedy. The tundra remembers everything,
even if it buries its memories under 6 feet of silence. And then, a scent.
Faint, almost mythical but unmistakable, muskoxen. Their quarry is near, unaware, grazing the frozen scrub with a stubbornness that speaks of creatures evolved for another age, when predators were fewer, and winters, perhaps, a fraction kinder. But the wolves know the dangers too. Muskoxen do not run from trouble. They meet it head-on, forming armored circles with calves at the center, horns presented like an ancient shield wall. A frontal assault would be suicide, so the wolves circle, vanish, reappear, testing, teasing, probing for weakness. They are not simply brutes. They are strategists, patient as the glaciers that once carved this land. One young wolf, overeager and reckless, lunges too soon. In an instant, a massive bull spins and charges, his hooves churning up ice and snow like a living avalanche. The wolf barely escapes a skull-shattering blow, scampering back to the safety of the swirling pack. From a distance, it almost looks like play, a deadly ballet where the cost of a misstep is measured not in embarrassment but in blood and broken bones. The matriarch watches. She waits. She knows that no fortress is perfect. Age, fear, fatigue, these are her allies. And sure enough, as the minutes drag into an hour, a younger muskox calf stumbles slightly, its footing unsure on a patch of treacherous ice. The line falters for a heartbeat. That is enough. The wolves surge as one, a tidal wave of purpose, focusing their fury with surgical precision. They do not rush blindly. They harry, feint, tire the defenders further. Snow explodes into the air, hooves hammer the ground like war drums, but the wolves are faster, nimbler, relentless. A strategic bite here, a well-placed nip there, until finally the calf is separated, not by brute force, but by exhaustion and fear and inevitability. There is no joy in the kill, no grand celebration, only necessity, cold and final as the wind that keens overhead. The wolves feed in silence, their bodies trembling not with excitement, but with the deep, ancient need to live another day. They devour not just the flesh, but the hope that somewhere in the frozen hours ahead, there will be another meal, another survival, another sun. And as they tear through hide and sinew, another marvel unfolds. Arctic foxes, ever the opportunists, begin to gather at a safe distance, their tiny forms half buried in the swirling snows. They know the rules here. They are thieves, jesters of the tundra, nibbling at the edges of the wolves' banquet with the kind of brazen boldness only hunger can inspire. Occasionally, a wolf will glance their way, and with a theatrical flick of a tail, the foxes scatter, not truly scared, but performing the ancient pantomime of fear that ensures they live to steal another day. But not everything is as it seems. The Arctic, ever the trickster, plays its own games. No sooner have the wolves fed than the blizzard intensifies, swallowing tracks, smothering scents, erasing all evidence of the hunt as if it had never happened. Visibility shrinks to nothingness. The pack tightens, bodies pressed together for warmth, the world reduced to a radius of scent and instinct. Somewhere beyond the veil of snow, another shadow moves. Not prey this time, but competition. Another wolf pack, drawn by the blood scent. In the Arctic, victory is never absolute. Even in triumph, a new battle waits, hidden just out of sight, breathing the same freezing air. And so, as the wolves lift their muzzles once more to the iron sky, their howls now a warning rather than a summons, the tundra holds its breath. The ghosts of the snow are not alone, not anymore. The Arctic coastline unfurls like the battered edge of an ancient shield, its ragged cliffs battered endlessly by the restless pulse of the sea. Where ice and rock collide in a chaotic embrace, a strange congregation has gathered, stirring the misty air with guttural snorts and the thick, wet slap of heavy bodies against frostbitten stone. Here, at the brutal threshold where land cowers before the icy ocean, the walruses have come ashore. A seething, groaning mass of flesh, tusk, and determination. The scent hits first, long before the herd itself emerges into view. A pungent cocktail of salt, brine, old blood, and something almost prehistoric, as if the wind has swept forward from a world before memory. The sounds follow, deep, reverberating bellows, the occasional sharp clack of tusks meeting in ritualized combat, and the heavy, labored breath of giants who have hauled their enormous bulk from the frigid waters to the relative safety of the rocky outcrops. Safety, however, is a fleeting illusion here, as fragile as the ice floes that birthed them. Each walrus is a contradiction incarnate, ponderous yet powerful, awkward yet indomitable. Their bodies sag under layers of blubber thick enough to laugh at knives and claws, but beneath that gelatinous armor lies muscle dense enough to shatter bones. Their tusks, those great sabers of ivory, serve not merely as weapons, but as tools. Grappling hooks for hauling themselves onto ice, status symbols for social posturing, and, when the moment demands, lethal spears against intruders bold or foolish enough to test their patience. They are not gathered here by choice. They are refugees in their own homeland, forced ashore in greater numbers each year as the sea ice, their true sanctuary, dwindles into ghostly slivers. Once, walruses spent most of their time lounging on floating platforms of frozen ocean, safe from many predators, diving for clams and mollusks in the rich shallows. Now, with the ice vanishing beneath warming skies, they must huddle together on land, shoulder to shoulder, calves squeezed into the heart of the herd, where the tusks of vigilant mothers form a living palisade. At a distance, the massed walruses resemble a single living organism, shifting and rippling as hundreds of bodies shift for space, for breath, for warmth. Yet look closer, and cracks in the unity appear. Males joust with bursts of surprising speed, their battles brief but ferocious, a clash of tusks that sends echoes ricocheting across the barren shore. A young bull, too bold by half, challenges an older male and is summarily rebuffed, flipping backward with a startled bellow that lands him face first in the snow, dignity lost but life thankfully intact. Even among these leviathans, humor finds a way to bubble up, unintentional though it may be. Yet the most fearsome test of their fortress is never internal. It lurks beyond the surf, a silent, slick shape cutting through the water with the grace of a phantom. Killer whales, orcas, have learned the bitter lessons of hunger, and in desperate seasons, they turn their black and white gaze toward these armored fortresses with a predator's cold calculation. In deeper waters, they are master tacticians, creating waves to topple icebergs, outflanking seals, and isolating prey with brutal efficiency. Against walruses, the gamble is greater, but the reward, fat, rich meat to fuel their relentless lives, is worth the risk. A ripple disturbs the steel-grey water, and an old bull closest to the shore lifts his head, nostrils flaring. The herd stiffens, an unspoken current of tension crackling through the mass. The calves, sensing danger in some ancient, marrow-deep part of their tiny souls, press themselves tighter into the crush of adult bodies. A female rears up, tusks bared, her bellow splitting the icy air like a cannon shot. For a heartbeat, the world holds its breath. But today the orcas do not strike. The shallows are too treacherous, the herd too tightly packed. The phantoms fade back into the mist, leaving only widening ripples and a lingering sense of borrowed time. Yet death wears many masks in the Arctic, and sometimes it comes not from the sea, but from the land itself. Far across the rocks, moving with an unsettling silence for something so massive, a polar bear emerges, its fur stained yellow by old blood and the oils of countless kills. It approaches with the lazy swagger of a monarch surveying a banquet, but every step is weighted with lethal intent. The bear knows the rules. A healthy adult walrus is a fortress, but a panicked herd can create opportunities. A calf separated from the throng, a sickly bull unable to rise. These are the cracks through which death can seep. The bear circles, feinting, testing, its massive paws crushing ice into powder. The walruses respond with a thunderous shifting, tusks bristling, a living wall of ivory and anger. One mother, her calf slipping slightly on the blood-slick rocks, bellows so loudly the air itself seems to vibrate. The bear hesitates. He knows too well that one wrong move could end with a tusk buried deep into his ribs, a slow, agonizing death under the indifferent gaze of the northern lights. With a low growl of frustration, the bear withdraws, melting back into the blizzard like a ghost denied his feast. The walruses settle once more, a few grumbles passing through the herd like aftershocks, but their vigilance remains high. In this place, survival is not a battle but a siege, fought day by endless day with bodies as shields and willpower as weapons. And still, the greatest threat is the one they cannot see. The disappearing ice that once held the ocean at bay, the slow death creeping into every breath they take. Without their floating fortresses, walruses are forced into perilous migrations, crushing each other in panicked stampedes when startled, drowning calves unable to find footing in open water. The battlefield is no longer just predator against prey. It is survival against a shifting, vanishing world. As the Arctic twilight deepens, casting the ice in hues of bruised purple and burning gold, the walruses huddle closer, breathing clouds of steam into the freezing air. Somewhere beyond the surf, the killer whales circle once more, biding their time. And inland, the polar bear waits too, patient and hungrier with each passing hour. The siege is far from over, and the next attack will not come from where they expect. The Arctic Sea lies deceptively still, its surface sheened with a fragile gloss of ice that fractures and reforms with every lazy turn of the tide. Above, the sky smolders in muted shades of grey, heavy with a silence so profound that even the gulls seem reluctant to disturb it. Only the occasional groan of shifting ice breaks the quiet. A low, mournful protest from a landscape balanced precariously between two states of matter, neither fully solid nor fully liquid, a battleground for creatures who have made this treacherous in-between their hunting ground. Beneath this uncertain crust, another world thrums with quiet energy. In the dim aquamarine gloom, shadows flicker, vast, graceful shapes slipping effortlessly through the water, unseen by the seals huddled nervously atop isolated rafts of ice. They are not the sharks of old sailor tales, nor the clumsy behemoths of warmer seas. These are orcas, killer whales, and they are far from mindless predators. They are artists of the hunt, sculptors of death, and the frozen wastes of the Arctic are their living canvas. A lone seal sprawls on a slab of ice no bigger than a dining table, its sides heaving as it dozes fitfully, lulled by the temporary illusion of safety. The floe drifts lazily, cradled by currents it cannot feel, oblivious to the rising tension below. Then, without warning, the surface trembles. A ripple, almost imperceptible, lances across the water. The seal startles, lifting its head, nostrils flaring to catch the scent of an enemy it cannot smell. Too late. From the depths, a monstrous form surges upward, not to seize the seal in jaws, but to strike the ice itself. The impact sends a shockwave through the floe, tilting it violently, flipping the helpless seal into the frigid embrace of the ocean. Before it can even shriek, the water explodes around it in a maelstrom of black and white fury. The orca's jaws clamp down with mechanical precision, and the floe, now empty, rocks gently back into place, as if trying to erase the violence it just witnessed. But the true mastery of the orca lies not just in brute force. It is their intelligence, their eerie, calculating teamwork that elevates them into something far more chilling. Unlike most predators, orcas are not solitary assassins. They are generals and tacticians, working in seamless concert with one another, communicating through a complex symphony of clicks, whistles, and body language that weave through the icy water like invisible threads. A pod of orcas, moving with the fluidity of thought itself, sets its sights on a pod of beluga whales, the pale ghosts of the Arctic, their smooth, smiling faces belying a shrewd wariness honed over centuries. Belugas are no easy prey. Their strong familial bonds and sophisticated echolocation make them elusive quarry. But the orcas know the game well. They herd the belugas toward shallow bays where escape routes are few and panic spreads like wildfire. Then, they divide and conquer, isolating individuals from the protection of the group, overwhelming them with coordinated strikes so ruthless and elegant they could almost be mistaken for choreography. What is most unnerving is the orca's capacity for innovation. No two hunts are identical. One day they may create synchronized waves to wash seals off high ice shelves. Another day they may feign retreat, luring belugas into false security before ambushing from below. They seem to learn, adapt, and even teach one another, passing down hunting strategies as cultural knowledge, a deadly inheritance polished over countless generations. And within their cold calculations, there is room for a kind of brutal playfulness. Young orcas have been observed practicing their hunting techniques on floating debris or even tossing helpless seals skyward in displays of strength and precision that border on the theatrical. To the seal, it is a nightmare of helplessness. To the orca, it is both practice and sport, a chilling reminder that, in nature's hierarchy, cruelty is often indistinguishable from skill. Above the waterline, the Arctic appears desolate, but beneath the surface, it is a symphony of strategy and survival. Sound travels faster and farther underwater, and orcas wield it like a second sense, using sophisticated echolocation to see through darkness, ice, and distance. A single click can reveal the size, shape, and even the internal organs of a hidden seal, painting a living X-ray image that no hiding place can truly mask. Yet paradoxically, their greatest strength, their reliance on sound, is becoming their Achilles heel. As human activity encroaches ever deeper into the Arctic, the oceans are growing louder. Ship engines, drilling operations, and sonar pulses create a cacophony that drowns out the orcas' delicate communications, fraying the threads of their carefully woven hunts. In the future, it may not be hunger or competition that threatens the black and white assassins, but the simple, relentless noise of human progress. For now, though, they reign supreme. A female orca, her flanks scarred by old battles and frozen ice shards, leads her pod toward the next challenge. The sea stretches before them, a chessboard of ice, opportunity, and danger. Every flow could hide a meal or a trap. Every dive could bring victory, or a fatal misstep into shallows too thin for their bulk. The Arctic offers no guarantees, only opportunities for those daring and intelligent enough to seize them. As the pod vanishes into the shifting tapestry of ice and mist, the water closes behind them with a soft whisper, erasing all trace of the lethal ballet that just played out. The flows drift, the gulls cry, and somewhere ahead, unseen and unsuspecting, another life draws breath. One that may, in mere minutes, feel the shuddering impact of an orca's shockwave strike. And beyond the open water, where the ice thickens once more into treacherous plains, a new battle stirs. One fought not on ice or sea, but in the twilight realm between worlds, where a smaller predator, cloaked in white and stealth, prepares for its own dance with death. The hunt never ends. The Arctic morning unfurls like a whispered secret, pale light bleeding hesitantly across a world so quiet it feels almost sacred. Frost crystals shimmer on the surface of the snow, catching the weak sun in bursts of fleeting fire, while the cold gnaws at the edges of existence with a patience that has outlasted empires. In this sprawling silence, broken only by the distant groan of moving ice and the muted sighs of a reluctant wind, something small stirs, a flicker of motion against the endless white. At first it is almost imperceptible. A ripple in the snow, a glint of mischievous life darting between drifts. Then, from the folds of a hollowed-out snowbank, emerges a creature perfectly crafted for invisibility, an Arctic fox, wrapped in a coat so flawlessly white it seems stitched from the tundra itself. She pads forward with a lightness that belies the fierce intellect burning behind her dark, inquisitive eyes. To the untrained eye, she is a ghost. To those who know better, she is a survivor, an opportunist, and a predator, wearing the charming mask of a trickster. Today, she is following a scent, thin but tantalizing, riding the breeze like a tantalizing ribbon. It is not the scent of prey she has killed, but of a kill made by a larger, clumsier hunter, a polar bear, whose plodding tracks crater the snow ahead like the footprints of some ancient, bumbling god. Where the bear has gone, scraps surely follow, and scraps are currency in the frozen economy of survival. Trailing a polar bear is a dangerous game, one that requires a delicate cocktail of courage, recklessness, and what some might kindly call optimism. To a bear, an Arctic fox is barely worth the effort of a paw swipe. Yet accidents happen, and a misjudged distance could turn the scavenger into the scavenged. Still, necessity drives boldness, and hunger sharpens even the smallest teeth. The fox weaves through the bear's towering footprints, occasionally hopping up onto the mounds left behind, as if mocking the giant's lumbering path. Her nose works the air, sifting through the tapestry of smells. Cold metal from the ice, the earthy musk of old blood, the sharp tang of salt. And then, jackpot. A bloodied patch where the bear had torn apart a seal, consuming the prime organs and leaving the less savory trimmings behind. To a polar bear, the leftovers are refuse. To the fox, it is a feast fit for royalty. She darts in, nimble as a leaf on the wind, tearing into the frozen meat with frantic urgency. Every bite is a race against the inevitable. Another fox, a passing gull, even the sudden chilling return of the bear himself. There is no etiquette in the Arctic buffet, only the law of first come, first devour. But even in victory, danger slithers close. Overhead, a glint of movement, a snowy owl drifting silent and deadly on the frigid air. The fox freezes, ears pinned flat, body coiled. The owl veers away, disinterested for now, its sharp eyes seeking smaller, easier quarry. Still, the encounter is a reminder. In this land of giants and shadows, Even the hunter can so easily become the hunted. With a belly half full and time slipping away like melting ice, the fox turns toward the next priority. Survival not just for herself, but for the squirming bundles hidden deep within the earth. Beneath a drift that from the surface seems no different from any other, she has carved a labyrinth of tunnels and chambers, an insulated fortress warmed by the collective body heat of her new litter. In a land where temperatures can plummet to a bone-shattering -50 degrees Celsius, warmth is not luxury, it is life itself. Inside the den, the kits tumble over each other in blind, squeaking chaos, their bodies still naked and fragile against the merciless cold. For them, the mother is the world. Warmth, food, protection, and hope bundled into a single living creature who must, against all odds, find enough sustenance to fuel their rapid, desperate growth. A single missed hunt, a sudden storm, a misstep near a prowling bear or wolf could unravel the delicate balance she has fought to create. Out here, irony reigns supreme. Though the Arctic fox wears winter's finest armor, it is in the deep, buried dark that her true battles are fought. She is a predator, yes, capable of stalking lemmings beneath meters of snow, her ears so finely tuned she can hear the tiny heartbeats of creatures scurrying far below the surface. In an acrobatic flourish that would make a gymnast weep with envy, she will leap high into the air and dive headfirst into the snow, pinning prey with pinpoint accuracy. Yet she is also a scavenger, a thief, a trickster willing to steal from the kills of others, to slip into seabird colonies and plunder unattended nests, to adapt with a pragmatism that would shame even the most seasoned Arctic explorer. In a place where death can arrive disguised as wind, water, or silence itself, flexibility becomes the greatest strength of all. Sometimes the fox plays a longer game. Following a polar bear across miles of tundra may yield nothing today, but patience might reveal the spoils of tomorrow. In lean times, she caches food, burying scraps in the snow to be retrieved later. Tiny insurance policies against an unpredictable future. These secret stashes are lifelines, though often rediscovered not by the original hoarder, but by sharp-nosed rivals in an endless cycle of theft and opportunity. As the pale sun sinks lower, casting the snowfields into a surreal ocean of gold and blue shadows, the Arctic fox slinks back toward her den. The wind howls louder now, a promise of another storm galloping across the ice plains. She quickens her pace, the urgency of the coming blizzard whispering through her fur. Far ahead on a ridge of cracked ice, she pauses, lifting her nose to the thickening air. Something stirs out there, not prey, not a predator, but something different. Movement low and heavy, too broad for a fox, too cautious for a bear. Another shape emerges from the twilight, bringing with it the scent of musk, earth, and ancient bloodlines. A muskox herd, ploughing their slow path across the snow. And with them another opportunity and another danger. Because in the Arctic, the smallest hunter must often dance at the feet of giants, threading the needle between survival and disaster, invisible as a shadow, silent as the snow itself, and the dance is only just beginning. In the Arctic's boundless theater of snow and silence, where giants like bears and wolves often steal the limelight, a quieter but no less brutal drama unfolds in the forgotten spaces between. Beneath the snowdrifts, within the skeletal remains of frozen forests, across the brittle skin of ancient ice. Here, the hidden hunters reign. They are the assassins of the underworld, the silent stalkers who move not with roaring strength, but with precision, patience, and a savagery no less lethal for its smallness. The dawn is little more than a suggestion, a cold wash of grey pressing against a sky so heavy it seems to bow under its own weight. Snowflakes spiral lazily in the breathless air, each one a tiny dagger in the making. Against this muted canvas, a new shadow stirs, ghostly, deliberate, and all but invisible. Perched atop a low ridge, blending so seamlessly into the snow that even the wind might overlook her, a snowy owl surveys her kingdom with eyes the color of molten gold. She is not just a hunter, she is a sculptor of silence, a creature so in tune with the hush of her world that even her wing beats seem stitched from the fabric of stillness itself. Below her, in the deceptively smooth surface of the snowfield, life wriggles in desperate defiance of the cold. Lemmings, small, twitching sparks of existence, tunnel and burrow, carving labyrinths beneath the ice to escape the predators of the open air. But the owl hears them. She hears everything. The faint tremor of tiny paws scratching through frozen earth, the almost inaudible rustle of fur against snow crystals, With a suddenness that seems almost supernatural, she launches into the air, wings spread wide in a moment of startling grace.
Her body cuts through the air in total silence, a ghost given form and purpose, and then a swift, decisive plunge. She does not land softly.
The impact sends up a puff of powdered snow as she punches through the crust and into the world below, seizing a lemming in talons so sharp they might as well be crafted from the ice itself. In another landscape, such a kill might be little more than a snack. Here it is survival measured by grams of flesh, by calories hoarded against the endless freeze. She lifts away, a pale spectre vanishing into the pewter sky, carrying her prize back to a hidden nest, cradling a brood of chicks as fierce and hungry as the cold itself. But the hidden hunters are not all creatures of the air. Far below, stalking the carcass of a muskox half buried in drifts of crusted snow, another predator lumbers into view, a creature wrapped in muscle, stubbornness, and a mean-spirited ferocity so profound it borders on myth. The wolverine. Shorter than a wolf, slower than an owl, and far from graceful, the wolverine is nonetheless the undisputed brawler of the north. With jaws strong enough to crack frozen bones and a temperament that can only be described as gleefully violent, this stocky marauder is a master of opportunism.
Where the mighty polar bears and swift wolves may pass by, calculating that the reward is not worth the effort, the wolverine stops, sniffs the air, and grins, if such a creature could grin, at the prospect of tearing apart the frozen relic with sheer, bloody-minded stubbornness. The wolverine throws itself into the task, muscles bunching under a pelt so dense that even knife-sharp ice cannot easily pierce it. Frost cracks like old parchment under its claws as it rips into the muskox, sending up a halo of shattered snow and old blood. It is a grisly, unceremonious feast, but there is a kind of rough poetry in it, a reminder that in the Arctic, waste is a crime few can afford. The wolverine eats what others cannot, thrives where others falter. It is not elegant, but it is, in its own brutal way, beautiful. Sometimes the wolverine becomes an unwilling combatant. Drawn by the scent of carrion, other scavengers may challenge its claim. Foxes, ravens, even the occasional hungry wolf. They rarely succeed. A cornered wolverine becomes a whirlwind of snarling fury, launching itself at opponents many times its size, with a reckless abandon that seems to defy natural law. More often than not, size and strength fall before sheer, rabid persistence, and the wolverine retains its grim prize, panting clouds into the air like a victorious, battle-scarred king. Yet not all the Arctic's hidden killers roar and charge. Some are delicate architects of death, working patiently beneath the snow's crust. Stoats, their sleek bodies wrapped in winter-white fur, twist and slip through tunnels like mischievous spirits. They hunt by scent and sound, their movement so rapid and serpentine that prey often has no time to react. A stoat can decimate a nest of voles or lemmings in a single night, gorging on the abundance of the hidden world while the surface remains deceptively still. The Arctic, it seems, is an iceberg of violence, only a fraction of the struggle visible above, while beneath the snow, entire wars rage in miniature. Even the water holds secrets. Beneath the thick skin of sea ice, polar cod dart and shimmer, preyed upon by stealthy seals who slip through breathing holes and crevices in search of fleeting meals. In these submerged battlefields, sound is weapon and warning alike. The crack of shifting ice, the muffled thud of a predator's body slicing through water, the sudden jarring silence when a hunt has found its mark. As twilight thickens and the world sinks once more into the half-light of perpetual winter, the hidden hunters retreat to their lairs and dens, to caches buried under drifts and nests hollowed out of frozen earth. The blizzard comes, a smothering, howling force that sweeps clean the surface of the land, erasing tracks, masking scents, closing off the world in a cocoon of cold and darkness. But beneath it all, life goes on. The tunnels hold warmth. The dens pulse with breath and heartbeat. The carcasses, half frozen, become feasts for those bold or brutal enough to claim them. The hidden war never stops, even when no eyes can see it. And far away, beyond the drifted dunes of snow and the bone-white valleys of ice, another edge looms. A place where survival teeters more precariously still, where prey are not just hiding but fighting back, turning ambush into counterattack in a ruthless dance that upends the rules of predator and prey. Because in the Arctic, nothing is ever as it seems.
And the next battlefield is not under the snow, but at the very boundary between life and death itself. The Arctic's breath rolls in slow, heavy waves across a sea stitched together by jagged mosaics of ice. Slabs creak and shift with the languid menace of something ancient waking from a restless sleep. Above, the sky broods in bruised shades of indigo and pewter, while the horizon shivers under the weight of gathering storms. In this realm, where every shadow conceals a threat, and every silence teeters on the edge of violence, one might be forgiven for thinking the seals, soft-bodied, wide-eyed, perpetually hunted, live their lives dangling helplessly on nature's sharpest hook. But the Arctic has little patience for weakness, and those who endure here wear armor unseen by the casual eye. Beneath the plush folds of blubber and whiskered faces lies a lineage hardened by siege. An empire of survivors who have learned through countless seasons of blood and ice that to live is to outwit, outlast, and sometimes outfight the very monsters that haunt their world. The floe shudders with a low, ominous groan, and a bearded seal, thick, broad, and shaggy as some relic of an ancient epoch, lifts his head from a breathing hole carved meticulously into the ice. His nostrils flare, tasting the air, searching for the betrayal of scent or vibration that signals danger. Around him, the landscape offers no comfort, just endless, shifting whiteness, a playground for predators who strike without warning. But this is no hapless drifter. This is a master engineer. His breathing hole, constantly maintained with teeth sharpened not for feeding, but for chiseling through ice, is his sanctuary, a portal between two worlds, death above and refuge below. A ripple disturbs the thin crust of snow nearby, and instinct explodes into motion. With a muscular thrust, the seal plunges into the water, vanishing in a spray of shattered crystals, just as a massive paw slams down where his head had been a heartbeat before. The polar bear, muscles rippling under its ivory pelt, glares into the water with a mixture of frustration and hungry calculation. Once again, the prey has slipped the jaws of fate. Below the ice, the world transforms into something startlingly alien, a cathedral of cold light and green gloom, where every movement is muffled and slowed, and danger can come from any direction. Here, the seal's ungainly bulk becomes a miracle of grace. He weaves through labyrinthine ice tunnels, dodging jagged stalactites and walls of blue-white ice, his body tuned by generations of selective pressure to hold breath longer than seems possible, to dive deeper than predators dare to follow, to read the vibrations of the world with whiskers more sensitive than any sonar. Seals are not merely prey, they are architects of survival. Ringed seals, no larger than a hefty house cat, carve upwards of 10 breathing holes across their territory, a network of emergency exits that would make any fugitive proud. These holes are guarded and maintained obsessively, ensuring that at any moment a desperate plunge can end not in death, but in a burst of freedom. They even build snow caves above their holes, hidden lairs where pups can be born and sheltered from the razor winds and marauding bears. These caves, warmed slightly by the mother's breath and body heat, form fragile domes of life amid a frozen sea of indifference. But even fortresses have their flaws. Polar bears, with their uncanny sense of smell, can detect a breathing hole buried under meters of drifted snow. The hunt becomes a brutal game of patience. The bear will crouch, motionless for hours, waiting for the faint scrape of claws against ice, the soft, plosive sigh of a seal surfacing for air. One misjudged breath, one careless moment, and the snow explodes in a violence of claw and fang. Yet the seals have evolved their own counters to this siege warfare. Some learn to sense the subtle pressure changes of a lurking bear poised above. Others to test holes cautiously, surfacing only briefly, tasting the air before committing fully. In deeper waters, bearded seals twist and spin, using their dense bulk to turn rapidly in tight spaces, a surprising agility for creatures that resemble sunken boulders rather than ballet dancers. In a twist that would seem almost comical if it weren't so vital, their thick whiskers, resembling a dignified moustache, are, in fact, high-tech sensory devices capable of detecting the minute eddies left by passing predators. And when escape demands more than finesse, there is always the third option: depth. Seals can dive for over 30 minutes at a time, plunging hundreds of meters into the abyss, where polar bears and even many orcas dare not follow. In the eternal night of the deep, they become shadows slipping through shadows, relying on memory, instinct, and the faint geomagnetic whispers of the earth itself to navigate. Yet even the sea holds assassins, and here the black and white kings of ambush, the orcas, reign supreme. Sometimes seals find themselves trapped between two nightmares: a bear above the ice, an orca beneath the flow. It becomes a grim calculation: trust the fragility of ice to hold, or trust the cold embrace of the sea to hide. In moments like these, survival balances on a blade so fine it is invisible, a split-second decision that will echo for generations if it succeeds. But the seal's story is not only one of constant flight. In rare, desperate confrontations, they turn and fight. Bearded seals, when cornered underwater, have been known to ram polar bears with their tusk-like teeth, a surprise counterattack that can bloody noses and split lips. A wounded bear limping across the ice is often a silent testament to prey that refuse to die easily. As the Arctic night stretches on, the floes drift and collide with a sound like distant thunder, and the seals resume their ghostly routines, surfacing to breathe, slipping back into the cold embrace, weaving lives of quiet brilliance beneath the grinding wheels of the ice. They are the invisible empire, a kingdom of survivors too often mistaken for victims, whose legacy is written not in blood, but in the spaces between. The tunnels unseen, the dives unrecorded, the escapes uncelebrated except by those who live to swim another day. And ahead, beyond the riven plains of drifting ice, the battlefield will change again. Because at the ragged edge where the frozen world meets the open sea, predators and prey alike gather for a final, desperate theater of survival. A place where every mistake is amplified, where the cold grows teeth of its own, and where those who rule the empire of the ice must prove once again that survival belongs not to the strongest or swiftest, but to the most stubbornly, brilliantly alive. The ice edge is calling, and not everyone will survive what comes next. At the ragged edge of the Arctic, where the frozen world fractures into the restless heave of open sea, nature stages its most ruthless, spectacular theater. Here, the ice does not lie still like a sleeping giant. It seethes, groans, and shatters, breathing in tides and exhaling misty vapor into a sky the color of old steel. The air hangs heavy with the scent of salt and blood, a visceral cocktail stirred by the ceaseless crash of waves against disintegrating floes. Above, the light clings stubbornly to the horizon, an endless twilight that neither fully yields to day nor to night, casting the world in a dreamscape of shimmering silvers and bruised purples. This is the frontier, the last stand between survival and oblivion, and it belongs to no one for long. It is a place where rules are written in fleeting frost and torn apart by teeth and tide. Predators and prey are drawn here as if by some primal magnetism, converging on this dissolving stage for a final, desperate act. Seals huddle at the brink of the floes, their bodies tense, whiskers twitching as they peer into waters too dark to trust. Polar bears prowl the fragmented landscape, their paws sending soft groans through the brittle ice, their black eyes scanning for weakness, for hesitation, for one mistake to crack open into opportunity. Below the surface, killers unseen weave between the ice pillars. Orcas, the wolves of the sea, moving with a predatory patience that defies the chaos above. And then there are the narwhals, the unicorns of the Arctic, ghostly forms gliding through the labyrinth of ice, their long spiraled tusks slicing through the water like living lances. Beautiful, otherworldly, and yet deeply vulnerable, they too must run the gauntlet of predators that patrol these deadly corridors. For them, the ice edge is both lifeline and death trap, offering breathing holes carved by centuries of habit, while simultaneously drawing hunters who have learned the bloody map of their migrations. From a distance, the ice edge appears serene, almost majestic. Vast floes drifting like alabaster continents against the endless churn of grey-green water. But up close, it is a battlefield where every second births a new gamble. A bearded seal lingers too long at a breathing hole, scanning the surface for threats. And in that blink of hesitation, a shadow rises from the depths. The water erupts in a violent column, an orca thrusting its massive head skyward, jaws clamping down with terrifying precision. The seal disappears in a froth of crimson, the ice stained momentarily before the current erases the evidence. Nearby, a polar bear senses the commotion and lumbers forward, its nose twitching in the salt-laden air. It has learned to read these signs. The chaos above water often signals a feast. But the bear must tread carefully. The ice is a treacherous tapestry of fractures and pitfalls, and beneath it, unseen assassins wait. Orcas have been known to ram floes from below, using their powerful bodies to split the ice and dump unwary bears into the freezing abyss.
The hunter can so easily become the hunted here, and even kings must mind where they place their feet. The tension thickens with every heartbeat.
A pod of narwhals surfaces, their sleek bodies slipping between floes, exhaling misty spouts into the air before vanishing again like spirits.
But one is slower, perhaps a calf, perhaps a weakened adult, and the water shudders ominously as black dorsal fins slice through it with chilling intent. The orcas fan out, executing a silent ballet of death. In an act of terrifying coordination, they herd the narwhal toward thinner ice, isolating it from its companions. A final surge, a final crack, and the ice gives way beneath the frantic, spiraling unicorn.
In a blur of white foam and dark bodies, the Arctic claims another life. But not all endings here are written in blood. In an ironic twist that only this brutal world could conjure, some seals survive not by fleeing, but by turning the ice itself into an ally. Older, wiser individuals learn to exploit the chaos, hiding among shattered floes too small to support a bear's weight, yet large enough to deny a clear strike from below. They drift, invisible amid the debris, breathing quietly, trusting in camouflage and the stubbornness of broken ice to carry them past danger. It is a gamble, and not all who play it win, but those who do buy themselves another day. And in the Arctic, another day is everything. The drama unfolds in layers, above the ice, on the ice, beneath it. Seabirds swirl overhead, crying out in frantic chorus, drawn by the scent of opportunity. Ivory gulls and skuas dive and squabble over scraps left from battles they dared not join. Even smaller hunters join the fray. Arctic foxes, nimble and audacious, dart across precarious ice bridges, scavenging leftovers with a brazen boldness that belies their size. In this frenzy, everyone is both predator and prey, both victor and victim, depending on the turn of the tide. As the hours bleed together into a ceaseless, echoing twilight, the ice edge shifts and mutates, cracking away from itself in carving groans and splintering roars. New channels open, old flows sink into the hungry sea. What was safe an hour ago is now a memory, and those who fail to adapt are pulled down without ceremony or mourning. It is a place of constant rebirth through destruction, a paradox of beauty forged in violence. And all the while, beyond the immediate bloodletting, larger forces gather. As the seasons teeter toward inevitable thaw, the ice will retreat farther still, driving the desperate and the daring into narrower corridors, compressing the battlefield until every square foot becomes a contest of life and death. Those who can read the shifting language of ice and sea will find a way to endure. Those who cannot will be claimed by a world that offers no second chances. As a final, ominous crack echoes across the ice fields, a lone polar bear turns its head toward the horizon. It is not the seal, or the narwhal, or the orca that draws its gaze this time. It is something deeper, more unsettling. The awareness that the ice itself, the very foundation of life in this realm, is slipping away. The edge is moving, and those who survive must learn to follow it into the unknown, or vanish with it into history's frozen past. Above the endless sweep of ice and shattered water, the sky itself becomes a hunting ground, alive with silent warfare and sudden death. In this unforgiving theater where survival so often hinges on stealth and patience, the air offers no sanctuary, only a new battleground where feathered reapers write their own ruthless histories in the thin, brittle winds of the Arctic. The day awakens reluctantly, a bruised smear of color along the horizon as the low sun tries and fails to assert its dominance over the iron chill. Clouds churn in slow leaden spirals overhead, heavy with the weight of coming storms. Against this brooding backdrop, a flash of motion cuts through the haze, a pale blur with wings sharp as scythes. A gyrfalcon, the Arctic's largest falcon, hurtles across the sky with terrifying purpose, its white-streaked plumage making it almost invisible against the ice-blasted terrain below. There is no hesitation in its path, no wasted movement. It is a missile guided by instincts honed over millennia, and it is locked onto a single target, an unwary ptarmigan scuttling across the snow, oblivious to the doom descending from above. In a breathtaking plunge, the falcon folds its wings tight, slicing the air with a speed that leaves the eyes struggling to follow. The silence is broken by a dull, heavy thud as bird meets bird, feathers exploding in a burst of snow and down. The gyrfalcon does not kill out of malice or bloodlust. It kills because to hesitate in the Arctic is to starve. Perched triumphantly atop its prize, the falcon tears into the soft belly of the ptarmigan, the smell of fresh blood briefly cutting through the sterile tang of ice and ozone.
But the gerfalcon is not alone in claiming the kingdom of the sky. Higher still, riding the thermals with lazy arrogance, a band of skuas scans the white wasteland below.
In warmer worlds, these birds would be mere scavengers, opportunists of the fringes.
But here, in a realm that punishes hesitation with death, skuas have evolved into something far more audacious. Pirates of the air, thieves so brazen they routinely harass eagles and falcons alike, forcing them to abandon fresh kills in mid-air. With shrieking cries and barrel-rolling dives, a pair of skuas locks onto the gerfalcon's feast below, already calculating how to separate predator from prize without risking injury themselves. The falcon, though fierce, knows the futility of guarding a meal against two relentless aggressors. With a disdainful flap of its broad wings, it lifts into the wind, abandoning the bloodied carcass to the thieving duo, who descend in a raucous, flapping fury. For all their bravado, even the skuas only snatch a few frantic mouthfuls before the inevitable scavengers arrive, a mob of ivory gulls, ghostly figures squabbling and jostling as they descend with the gracelessness of drunk aristocrats at a banquet. What began as a solitary precision kill dissolves into a chaotic swirling melee of wings, beaks and noise, a carnival of hunger and desperation flaring brightly against the frozen silence. Above this low-altitude anarchy, a different kind of drama unfolds, one that plays out in the shadowed crags of sea cliffs and battered outcrops. Here, snowy owls sit enthroned like spectral sentinels, their golden eyes reflecting the muted light, their plumage so perfectly matched to their environment that even the keenest gaze can mistake them for drifting snowbanks. But make no mistake, these regal figures are no passive observers. When hunger gnaws at the belly, the snowy owl becomes a merciless hunter, capable of snatching prey with a swiftness that seems almost supernatural.
An unfortunate gull, momentarily distracted by the gluttonous feast below, does not see the owl's silent descent until it is far too late.
In a flurry of wings and a muffled gasp of feathers, the owl seizes its quarry and lifts back into the air, carrying its squirming prize away to a hidden perch.
Efficiency reigns supreme here. Every successful hunt buys another few precious days in a world that punishes even the smallest miscalculation.
And yet, for all the savage beauty of these aerial assassins, there is humor too. The clumsy fledgling skua that tries to intimidate a fully grown falcon and is promptly swatted aside like an irritating leaf. The gull that, in its zeal, crash lands on an icy patch and skitters inelegantly across the surface, dignity discarded in a flurry of frantic flaps. Survival may be the only true currency in the Arctic, but even here, nature cannot resist a wry twist of comedy amid the carnage. The paradox of the Arctic sky is stark. It is at once a canvas of ethereal calm and a stage for relentless warfare. Every shadow could be a predator, every glint of movement the last thing a creature sees. And unlike the bloody spectacles that play out on the ice and sea, here death often comes with no warning, no struggle, only a sudden absence where life once flickered. As evening approaches, if such a word holds meaning in a land where twilight stretches on without end, the chaos slowly recedes. The gulls and skuas settle into uneasy roosts, the falcons retreat to hidden crags to preen and digest, the snowy owls vanish into the sprawling white like living whispers. But the battles are far from over. They merely sink into the dark, waiting for the next breath of light to stir them into new, desperate motion. Because tomorrow, another round of war will unfold in the brittle blue above the ice, fought with talons and beaks and silence sharper than any blade. And beyond the low drifting clouds, something stirs on the land itself, an unexpected movement in the frozen heart of the tundra, where, under the wavering lights of the aurora, a predator, even stealthier than the birds, prepares to wage its own invisible campaign against the blood and breath of the Arctic. The final hunters are waking, and they are not what anyone expects. The Arctic twilight bleeds across a broken world, staining the horizon in bruised hues of violet and ash. The air tastes different now, not just of salt and cold, but of something stranger, sharper, a bitter tang of change hanging thick in every breath. The ice is retreating with a sigh that is almost too vast to hear, fracturing not only the frozen skin of the earth, but the ancient rhythms of life that once spun with patient certainty beneath the stars. This is no gradual erosion of an old kingdom. This is collapse, sudden and staggering, a frozen apocalypse thawing into chaos. And into this unraveling tapestry march new kings.
Where once the great polar bear reigned supreme, now alien footprints mar the snow. Heavier, broader, grittier, paw prints that speak of a stranger's presence in a land that should have swallowed him whole. The grizzly bear, a creature of temperate valleys and boreal forests, has found its way north, following the scent of opportunity on the rising warmth of a world unhinged. No longer confined by the fierce winters that once caged him, the grizzly has breached the Arctic's sacred thresholds, crossing rivers no longer frozen, wandering tundra that blooms too soon, too lush. At first, the meetings are rare, uneasy encounters at the margins of a shifting world. A grizzly, gaunt but ambitious, scavenges the remains of a whale carcass once guarded jealously by polar bears. A lone polar bear, lean from a failed hunting season, eyes the intruder with a confusion that borders almost on disbelief. The dance of dominance begins, a clumsy, fumbling ritual between two apex predators who were never meant to share a kingdom. Yet nature, ever the trickster, is not content with mere rivalry. In the Arctic's melting crucible, something even more astonishing and unsettling is taking shape. From these rare meetings, hybrids are born. The Pidsley bear, a strange amalgam stitched from the DNA of two different worlds. Leaner than a grizzly, stockier than a polar bear, with a coat a dingy mix of white and brown, these bears are not just curiosities. They are survivors, Frankenstein's heirs, engineered by accident to navigate a world where pure specialization is now a death sentence. The Pidsley bear inherits the polar bear's endurance in cold seas and the grizzly's tolerance for warmer climates and varied diets. Where the polar bear mourns the loss of seals and shrinking ice floes, the Pidsley sniffs out berries, digs for roots, and when fortune allows, drags down a hapless caribou. It is a flexible, adaptable predator in a world that no longer rewards purity. And while one might be tempted to marvel at this accidental creation, nature's last-minute Hail Mary, it is a grim marvel, born of desperation rather than design. Other newcomers creep northward too, quietly rewriting the Arctic story with every tentative paw step. Red foxes, once banished by the cold to the southern tigers, now outcompete their smaller, fluffier Arctic cousins, stealing dens, preying on kits, forcing ancient bloodlines to retreat further into the shrinking pockets of true winter. Killer whales, emboldened by ice-free seas, venture deeper into territories once guarded by pack ice, preying on narwhals and belugas unaccustomed to such relentless organized assault. Even the insect world shifts. Mosquitoes swarm earlier, thicker, draining the blood of already stressed caribou herds, spreading parasites and disease like a whispering plague. And so the Arctic, that once pristine monument to the endurance of life under siege, becomes something stranger, more volatile, a place where predators that never should have met now clash and adapt in an escalating arms race. The ancient balance, slow, brutal but achingly stable, dissolves into a frenzy of improvisation. The irony, cruel and bitter, is impossible to ignore. In this place once ruled by the merciless indifference of cold, it is now warmth that kills. A polar bear, battered and thin, treads an endless expanse of waterlogged slush, where once he strode across fortress-thick ice. His paws, evolved for friction on frozen surfaces, slip clumsily on wet meltwater. His quarry, the seals he once ambushed with sovereign ease, are fewer, more elusive, faster in warmer seas. Hunger gnaws at him with a ferocity greater than any rival, hollowing him out until even the once absurd idea of scavenging berries seems a reasonable gamble. Meanwhile, in the thawed hinterlands, a grizzly teaches her hybrid cubs to dig for roots, to fish in streams now gushing with early melt. The cubs, half creatures of ice, half of earth, fumble awkwardly, mixing instincts that were never meant to share a single mind. One swats lazily at a snowflake drifting late across the air, a tiny ghost of a dying world brushing against a creature not meant to remember it. Above them, the sky weeps ice and rain in confused bursts, storms brewing out of season, winds carving new scars into the land. The aurora dances overhead in green and violet ribbons, lighting a stage where old giants fall and new monsters take their first trembling steps into a future none were prepared for. And somewhere beyond the jagged horizon, the sea itself boils with the first storms of summer. Storms once tempered by vast fields of unbreakable ice, now unchained, churning the Arctic waters into maelstroms that scatter life like leaves before a hurricane. The frozen apocalypse is not coming. It has already begun. Yet even in this twilight of the old Arctic, There is no final curtain call, no tidy end to the story. Life claws and scrapes and reshapes itself in defiance, in desperation, in brilliance. New predators rise, old ones fall. Alliances fracture and reform, and the grand, indifferent clockwork of evolution grinds onward, fueled by chaos instead of certainty. Tomorrow's Arctic will not be the one written in legends and ice. It will be something wilder, stranger, a place born not of ancient glaciers, but of fire, fury, and the relentless hunger to survive. The final hunt has only just begun.